Thank you for tuning into our seller interview series. Up today, we've got a 2-site dropshipping, Amazon FBA, and e-commerce business package for sale in the health and personal care niche. Created in January of 1995, this business makes $6,710 per month in net profit, and the listing number for the business is 44531. We do these interviews to give potential buyers more information about both the seller and the businesses they're looking to purchase. We hope these insights are helpful for you in making a buying decision. We've got the seller with us today to go through the business and cover everything from niche selection to traffic and monetization. Thank you for coming on today, Matt.
Sure, it's my pleasure.
Before we dive into the questions that I have for you, I want to go ahead and run through a quick summary of the business. Again, the business was built in January of 1995, has a monthly revenue of $19,200, expenses of $12,490 to make for a net profit of $6,710, which is generated on a 12-month average. Included in the sale of this business are the main site domain, second site domain, 35 associated domains, social media profiles for main site, which include Twitter, Pinterest, and an abandoned Facebook page, social media pages for the second site, which include Twitter, Pinterest, Facebook, and Google+, the Amazon Seller Central account, supplier contacts, and SOPs, and government contracts. Please note that inventory is not normally included in the list price. Further details can be provided to active depositors. Matt, can you tell us a little bit about your background in building and running online businesses?
Sure. So online specifically or overall?
Go a little into your background in brick and mortar.
Sure.
I know that this business really started in brick and mortar. And tell us how you developed from brick and mortar to an online entrepreneur.
Sure. So I started my first business when I was 12 and when I couldn't even spell entrepreneur. And some days I still can't spell entrepreneur.
It's the worst word to spell.
It's the EU or, and it keeps eluding me sometimes. But I'm a serial entrepreneur and had my first online business was actually in the book space in 2001 at that point. And, from there, this is back in the day when VPSs didn't exist and when, SSLs were many hundreds, if not $1,200 or so, and authorized.net was the only gateway, and you had to use gateways, and it was a very different world than today. Then another company that was essentially a click and mortar where people could go online and order food and we would deliver to them, sort of like, and it would be like a Postmates or an Uber Eats of today. But this is back in 2002, which we had for about 10 years, a company in the storage space where people would order online and we would actually do the pickups and deliveries in person. So I've been around, Zencart and, Magento since since it's really started, quite honestly. And, and then from there, so I've been around e-commerce for a while. Kind of love it and keeps pulling me back in.
It's interesting because I look at this and even at January of 1995, let alone the fact that the business was really started before that with the brick and mortar store, but this business is older than I am. I was born in November of 1995. So my question is, that's a long time. I can tell you that is 22 years or more, 23 years, because January has already come this year. So 23 years of history for this online store. What bumps on the road have you hit? What things did you learn along the way?
Well, so first of all, I acquired the business in 2015 because I would have been about 10 years old at the time that the business started. So what's kind of cool is that I'm just like a steward and someone who's sort of picked it up and kind of dusted it off and cleaned up a lot of stuff in the process, just kind of fall in love with it. But I've got another business that's been taking more of my time. And I'm kind of one of those people who believes that if something isn't growing and you're not spending, and giving a lot of time to it, it's dying slowly. And I really just don't want to see that happen. But again, this is one of the first 100 sites with a shopping cart on the internet. Everything started with the original founder hard coding everything. And it was originally based on Mail Order Manager, or MOM, which is like a Fox Pro database, which I'm not even really sure what it is. I only learned about it after acquiring the company. And it's pretty much seen almost every trend in e-commerce, since day one and before. And it's a really cool business that I don't usually see as someone who's bought and sold a bunch of online businesses in the past. It's just, you don't usually see something like this, which is kind of what attracted my attention to it when I first saw it in 2014.
And what has happened since you bought it in 2014? Have you grown it? Has it been stagnant? What's been going on?
So when I acquired it, it was being managed, and the first site and the main site was being managed by people who just didn't understand e-commerce. They were more kind of pick, pack, and ship employees, and as an owner seemed to sort of get disengaged with it. It just sort of fell into disrepair. So things like there was an Amazon store that was making about $100,000 a year, but losing money. And quite honestly, my response is like I looked at the couple of things that weren't losing money and just shut everything else off. And I have not had a chance to really go back and focus on it. But it was a lot of taking kind of the frame and the bones of what was there, getting rid of things that didn't make sense, creating a significant amount of process and just cleaning up and showing love to it and taking something where there was so much there and fixing it. We've been flat to a little bit up on revenue, but much more profitable. So, I would much rather have something where it's profitable and it works and someone can build from there than something where it's just sort of broken. It was definitely more broken than I expected, initially.
And now you feel like you've done a good job of making it so it's no longer broken.
100%. What we have right now is a lot of that is due to process. We've essentially taken everything and things that were losing money, we've either adjusted the price or taken it off. We haven't really pushed those changes to third-party sites because our focus has been on our site, but it's something that a buyer could and absolutely should do. We've essentially taken everything, broken it down into process, passed it to a person who works for us full time, who's offshore actually in your neck of the woods in the Philippines, and essentially made it so it makes profit and makes money and doesn't require a ton of time. I think it makes sense for someone to spend more time on it and truly grow it and truly figure out some of the off-channel things and grow into different categories and update it, because quite honestly, I just have not had the time to focus on it. But it's absolutely my passion project. I absolutely love.
So when you work on the business, what do you put your time into doing?
So what my focus is, one is I route most emails customer service wise to go to me because I like to know about any problems. So I probably forward 3 or 4 emails a day, to people and just sort of take a look at that. Once a month, I look at financials. If someone has a question or something like that, then usually what will happen is I'll make a process for it so I don't have to answer the question ever again. But by and large, I don't spend much time on it outside of there are a couple of, if a sales inquiry comes in for a larger account, which could be anything from government to a university to someone offshore. Unfortunately, a lot of the offshore ones usually are not legitimate inquiries. But responding to that, there really is not a ton of time that we put into it, though.
You mentioned the processes that you write up, and you were telling me about this before we got on the phone here, or before we started recording here.
Yep.
And can you tell listeners a little bit about these processes? Because I know that you're very proud of them.
I'm proud of them because it literally has allowed me to not spend time on something more than once. And I feel like, having been on the buyer's side more time than I've been on the seller's side of the phone, everyone says oh yeah, we'll figure that out, or that's really simple. As soon as you buy, we'll show you that. And it just sort of, in my experience, has never come and never been there. And so we literally set out how do we handle everything? So I'm looking right now at a list of what we've got. And so one is just chargebacks, and you open it up and it's investigating a chargeback, and it says log into the gateway, go to the report section, enter the draft or ticket number in the order number field. And it literally goes through every single step. This is going to be a 20-step process. Many of them have videos, and it's everything from how to send a follow-up campaign to a segment in MailChimp. And there's a video above, and then there's, it's log into MailChimp, there's a picture of the login screen. They're just literally tons of pictures. So if I were to hand the business over to you tomorrow, you would be able to run everything based on the documentation we have. And it's everything from how to place a dropship order, how to create a UPS form, how to test a promo code, inventory and par levels, how to create a sales receipt, blog post writing, and our process for hiring new people, our monthly social media schedule. So literally everything from top to bottom has been set up to literally be handled without me, and essentially I'm totally irrelevant to the operations of the business, which is sort of terrifying and amazing all at the same time. And it's only terrifying because I feel completely irrelevant at times.
That's really interesting that you feel that way. How long have you felt that you were not necessary for the business?
So we bought it January 1st of 15, and we probably have spent, I would say, probably It's over 1,000 hours, certainly. I would say somewhere around mid 16, I say, was when a lot of the weight had been lifted off. And now I think the only time that someone asks me for something is something that is sort of either a snowflake, meaning it doesn't happen that often, or it's something that is really just, like something that new that hasn't come up, which does not tend to happen that often now. So it's kind of cool. But as I said, it's one of those things where if I derive all of my self-worth from the business, I would be pretty lonely and pretty upset because like I've just sort of set it up to be, and to operate without me, which I mean is great because, I've been able to, I have a baby who's, in the few months old range now, and I've been able to just disappear and not be around, which is like the huge benefit. But it's kind of amazing to, to see how little I'm needed now compared to before where it felt like I was needed to do everything and anything.
And do you mean disappear on the business, not disappear on the baby?
Yeah, exactly. Well, yes, definitely on the business.
So with all of these social media channels that are available for this business, how are they utilized? Could they be improved on, or do you feel like they do a pretty sufficient job right now?
So we have not spent a ton of time on the business social media wise. What we've found is we tried a little bit in the beginning and we were not able to get that traffic to convert. So we just sort of naturally kind of just shied away from it and haven't really spent that much time on it. I don't know if that's the right answer, and maybe I should be spending more time on that. But a lot of what we bought a company that was old but not taken care of well. So it's kind of like going into like a hoarder's house and trying to find stuff to put on eBay, where it's like there are some times you're going to just throw stuff out as you're going. That if you had only that one room to to work on, you might spend time kind of cleaning up. So essentially, we just kind of went through and said like, okay, like this doesn't make sense. It's losing money. Shut it off. We'll figure it out later. And a lot of that stuff is still a big opportunity. Social media, I think, is one of those things that I'm optimistic, but I'm slightly skeptical about social media generating revenue as a whole. And I think that my bias sort of against it is probably part of the reason why we haven't gone back to it, quite honestly.
With all of the parts of the business here, you have the drop shipping, the e-commerce, the Amazon FBA. Which section of the business generates the most revenue?
So mostly I would say it's e-commerce, but the way we fulfill, so we have a very overall lean inventory. So I would say we keep about a month or so of inventory, month to month and a half of inventory on hand. Obviously it depends on the SKU because we have, I want to say probably about 1,000 SKUs or so on the site, mostly variations. So we'll sell things we'll buy in a case of 1,000, and it could be that someone's buying a dozen or 100 or 250 or 500. If it's a larger order, we'll sometimes drop ship direct from a distributor or a manufacturer. If it's something that is like more kind of B2C, like typical everyday order, we usually have that in the warehouse and we'll just drop ship. Or I'm sorry, by drop ship, I mean send from our 3PL. So I have no inventory that sits in my home. I haven't seen the inventory since we moved it to a 3PL in, I want to say it was late 16, I think, called like the summer of 2016 or so. And they just, pick, pack, and ship everything. But, the website generates most of our revenue. We also have contracts with someone who is in Europe, who essentially buys from us and resells in the Europe market, and one that is a government agency. So those are two things where we'll get large size orders less frequently. And then there's kind of the e-commerce orders that come in every day that are shipped out by the 3PL. Anything that can't be shipped out by the 3PL needs to be drop shipped. That's where the person who's offshore in the Philippines, takes care of that.
What do you feel some of the major opportunities for growth are that a new owner could take advantage of?
So I think there's a sort of two different angles. One would be on the B2B side, one would be on the B2C side. On the B2B side, I would say it's reaching out. We have a list of universities and the right places to reach out to. It would be a really good campaign, reaching out to that list, which we actually are having when our assistant offshore has downtime. We're having her fill out and complete that lead list. So this way we're utilizing them more completely as opposed to them having downtime. That would be more on the B2B side. On the B2C side, there's a natural upsell. Depending on the product someone buys, there's almost always a natural upsell. And we really should spend some time and money investing in having that built into the site. And we just have not. Because I think there's a way to increase the average ticket of everything that's going on and every order that comes through by probably, I would go with about 15 to 25%, depending on the SKUs that are picked. And the other piece is there's a ton of lack of education in the product space, and that creates a ton of opportunity that I still feel like we really have not done a good job with. The great thing is that we're in an industry that is 100% recession proof and quite honestly is beyond evergreen.
You mentioned the education factor as an opportunity. So how would you go about trying to educate people on the products, on the niche, on the space, if you were to keep the business and try to grow it?
Well, so what's interesting is I got an idea. Yesterday, I was listening to the sample interview of another Empire Flippers business, and it was talking about comparison blogs. And I felt like it was like a bolt of lightning that was like, oh my God, I can't believe you haven't done this. Because people are so just uneducated and just often don't have the experience, like understanding the product. I feel like it's a natural place where we could either build out some sort of like a kind of plug and play thing where we could compare products on a very detailed level. And I feel like from that, we could probably create, I don't know, 500 to 1,000 pieces of content. And my mind has been sort of churning about like, how do I create that and how do I create that as a process that could be done by someone else to create all that content, which will then be indexed really, really well. It was funny. We were working with, we first had an SEO consultant who a friend recommended. I was based in the UK, who I'm happy to share the contact information with a buyer on. And he absolutely loved this site because when we bought it, we were at about 20,000 or so page views, and he just tweaked a couple things and it like jumped. Again, his response was, this is kind of like trying to put like an ice cube across like a wet counter in terms of like responding, because the site is so old, so trusted. No one's messed with anything backlink wise ever. And as a result, it responds so fast compared to what he's used to. He was telling me, oh, it'll be 3 or 4 months. And literally within like a couple of weeks, we were watching stuff just like traffic just like move really quickly. I'm sure that if someone actually went back in, we literally just hired him to fix redirects and do some very like high level stuff. We really haven't done anything in the past couple of years. But that was kind of his response, which I thought was just really cool and just just not normal and not my experience with other SEO or SEO for other sites that I've had.
Do you feel like there are any major risks associated with this business that a potential buyer should be aware of?
I would say that we have 2 contracts comprise probably about somewhere between about a little more than a third of our revenue. We've had the contracts. There's 2 of them. One that started in November, December of last year, and is essentially, it is a 2-year agreement. But because it's an offshore entity, that doesn't make sense to to litigate anything because it's just not enough revenue to want to actually hire an attorney in Europe and try to sue them. So that would be a risk. The government contract that we have, there's another year on it as of now, so it essentially expires in July of 19, and there's 2 renewals before a rebid is required. The agency that we have essentially became under scrutiny, as a lot of other agencies have, for granting contracts for too long. So we essentially rebid it last year and won it easily. It's been around, God, I want to say since like 2013, 2014 or so. So it's been around for 5 years already. And we've got it for essentially another 3 years. And I expect it to continue beyond then because they've been really happy with us. We've been really happy with them. So that would be one risk. Another risk would be, I would say that if there are probably 6 or 7 suppliers and distributors in this space. So if you ended up angering all 6 or 7 of them, that would be a risk. I would say we've been around so long that I'm not like, I can't, like, we haven't been hit by anything Google related. So it's not really anything from that I'd worry about. Depending on where you host, like hosting could be an issue. We found, so we're based, both of the sites are based on Magento, and we're hosting right now at a company based it's a Magento specialized host, effectively based in Chicago, and we've been really happy with them. But like, if someone went in and really screwed up the site, that would be a risk. It's one of those things where, because it's been around for so long and seen, and sort of been through so many things, like someone introduced me to, it was a seller of the second site, was like, oh, like, I really like this guy. You got to reach out to, I think his name is Kenny, I think, but you got to talk to him. And he emailed me being like, oh, he's like, I've been in this industry, for 20 years. And like, I used to sell to the first site, which I didn't even realize, when I worked at another company. And it's like, it's just, we're like, I just feel so lucky because, I mean, how often do you see someone where they're connecting you, they already know your history, are already happy with you, and like, are great to hear from you. I mean, I feel like that doesn't happen and hasn't happened when I was in like the moving industry or other industries like that. And I just kind of feel like that's like really cool.
Hmm. Would you commit to a non-compete?
Absolutely. My goal, like, I love the business and I want it to succeed. And whatever makes someone feel comfortable with that. I mean, I'm happy to commit to a non-compete and, and do, whatever makes buyer comfortable. Because like, as I said, I'm usually on the buyer side of the phone, not the seller side of the phone.
So in terms of making the buyer comfortable, what are you willing to offer in terms of helping out during the transition period?
Whatever is needed. I mean, my expectation is that someone should be able to pick this up fairly quickly with the documentation. But the goal is, I think it's kind of specific to the person. I mean, if someone wants me to come over and and fly out to wherever they are, I can spend a couple days on site if needed, or a week on site if needed, and then and then essentially something by phone. If they live nearby the New York metro area, they're more than welcome whenever. I mean, my goal is to make sure that they have everything they need. I feel like having someone who's been managing the site for, I guess, a little over 2 years now, and and them going with the company should defray that risk significantly, and even having the processes to defray it significantly as well. But the goal is to make sure whatever makes a buyer feel comfortable is really what I'm fairly comfortable with, and and going from there.
Are you willing to discuss something like an earnout?
So yeah, I would be open to an earnout. I mean, obviously, every seller wants all cash at closing. Every buyer wants to defray their risk. I will say that in January of 2016, I had a deal that I sold where a buyer didn't want to pay like a second part of an earnout. So I'm a little bit. I would want to make sure that I'm better protected on the second deal, but I am absolutely open to an earnout and open to making sure that a buyer feels comfortable, because if there isn't trust on both sides, no matter how much paper deal or whatever, it just won't work.
Awesome. Matt, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really, really appreciate it. I know across the world here, New York to Vietnam, it's pretty fantastic that we're able to connect here.
Yeah, I agree.
I do have a final question for you. Before we get to that, though, I want to go ahead and run through the quick summary of the business again.
Sure.
The online component for the business was created in January of 1995, has a monthly revenue of $19,200, expenses of $12,490 to make for a net profit of $6,710, which is generated on a 12-month average. Included in the sale of this business are the main site domain, the second site domain, 35 associated domains, social media profiles for main site, social media profiles for second site, Amazon Seller Central account, supplier contacts and SOPs, and government contracts. Please note that inventory is not normally included in the list price. Further details can be provided to active depositors. Matt, can you give me, in your own words, your best 30-second pitch on why someone should purchase this business?
So I would say, what you're buying is two sites that have been around for the first for 20-something years, and then the last for about 7 or 8 years, that cover two different parts of the same product mix. You've got a customer base of essentially 200,000 who have purchased, overall in through the years. There's an active list of 20,000. We'll have customers who will call us after not buying for 10 years because they remember our name, and will just pick up the phone and call us or place an order. We've got stable process, stable inventory and suppliers, great relationships, and and quite honestly, great runway in an evergreen product that is recession proof.
And at the end of the day, this business has a ton of history that shows that it's been around a while, and there's no reason that it won't be around for much longer.
Yeah, I can't see any. I mean, this is my personal criteria is I don't look at businesses or like businesses that are less than 2 or 3 years. And we're so far beyond that with this that it would be hard to see this not continuing for many, many, many more years.
Matt, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Of course, thanks for your time.
If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to our channel. And if you want more information, the link will be below the video that will take you to this marketplace listing. If you're watching this on the listing site and want more information, become a depositor today. When you make the deposit, one of our business advisors will be in contact with you, and you'll be given everything you need to review this business. Have a great day.